lost our stream there.
It's a bit like that.
Okay, I think we're, boy, it's a real adventure every day, isn't it?
Your nerves must be in shreds.
Not at all. I'm cool as a cucumber. Okay, I think we're good here. I believe we're good. We should be live. I hope we're live. Let me just check because there was an unusual and new anomaly that occurred when we started. But of course, my guest today, once again, is Angela Power Disney, our friend who has joined us in the past. Now, Angela, you are looking mighty vertical today. Can you switch to a horizontal orientation on the pad?
This iPad is all new to me because I've lost all my tech.
Let's see how
this
that...
This is my son's iPad, but we can try. How's that?
It's your sideways now, but let's put it back to the way you had it, and we'll just deal with it like that. Should be no problem.
Well, I don't want to be sideways.
Okay, then let's do this. We'll disconnect. Hold it the way you have it now, and I'll call you right back on Skype, and we will begin in just a moment. I think the problem is you started sideways, so it's got you sideways. Let me...
I started, so I'll finish. Okay.
I'll call you right back, and we'll fix it. Leave it like this. Okay, so my guest once again is going to be Angela Power Disney, and let's just get Angela back on the line here. She is the woman who joined us just last week discussing her experiences as an MK Ultra mind control victim. And we're going to be discussing that some more in depth today as soon as we get Angie on the line here. A lot of people saw yesterday, we had our friend Michael join us, and we experienced substantial technical interference. Seems to be the case more often than not. Are you with us there, Angela?
I am.
Okay,
I'm still sideways. Let me just see if my son can...
But I don't see video on you at all.
You don't have video, okay. Josh, can you make it go, what do you call it, sideways?
I do my best to try to connect with guests ahead of time, but sometimes it's difficult. You know what? If you go, Josh, if you're there, if you go into the preferences on the iPad and turn off the orientation lock, I think that'll fix it.
Yeah. Oh, it's upward.
Let's have a little musical interlude while we're waiting for this. This is a great cover of a great song by Stephen Marley. That's appropriate for today.
Maybe we're just high.
Very good practice. Do you know where you'd find it?
Now we get the camera oriented there for Angie.
You can hold it and do it.
Let's just go vertical. I don't want to waste too much of people's time if we can't solve it right away. Got it? Yeah, that's fine. That's going to be fine. We'll just do that.
Okay.
All right, and so that you can see what we're talking about, we're going to share the screen to you like that. All right. So, Angie, how you doing? It's been a few days since we've last spoken, and why don't you tell everybody what has occurred since then?
Okay, so on Friday, I got raided by police, and there were 4 or 5 of them with a warrant.
Wow.
To confiscate my technology.
What was the basis upon which they received that warrant? What have you done?
I've been investigating a satanic ritual abuse allegation called the Hampstead case in London for just over 3 years. And the alleged leader of that cult has pressed harassment charges against almost all of the campaigners that worked on that case, and I was the last one standing. So just
say again, you were the last.
I was the last campaigner that had not yet been arrested or sectioned or evicted or harassed. You know, I mean, I have been harassed greatly online, but I was the last one to have like this harassment thing rolled out on. And what happened was, a couple of months ago, him and his children had been given fake identities and disappeared. And I resigned from the case about 2 months ago, saying, look, I've given this 3 years of my life. It's affected me hugely and my family. I'm stepping down. And then about a week after I stepped down, I got intelligence of the children resurfacing. And it was at his own hand. He appeared in an eBay promotional video in America with the children, full camera, lights, action, internationally, eBay promotional video for Entrepreneur of the Year awards. He got a free holiday to America and chose to go and appear. So I did a blog about it, but I didn't name him.
Let me slow you down a second, because I'm a little bit behind on this. I'm just, as you're speaking, Googling the Hampstead case, and there's a lot of stuff coming up. Most of it, as I'm sure you would expect, is referring to it as a hoax. But I want to make sure that both I and the viewers watching right now are aware of what you're talking about. So here's an article from Ham and High, which is some UK source I'm not familiar with, but they're saying that a man was jailed over a satanic abuse hoax. So I presume this is a blogger who was, they say he was harassing parents of children caught in false allegations. Now, is this the same Hampstead ring where a young girl gave an interview?
It was a girl and a boy, a brother and sister, disclosed on video camera to their mother's partner horrific satanic ritual abuse in a school and a church and other locations in Hampstead.
I've seen it. 2 young children.
Yeah, and then when they went through all the proper steps, they went to a family police member and then to the police, and the children were taken off them. And 5 days later, the children, so say, retracted with a police interview. And since then, the Independent Police Complaints Commission upheld a complaint that the detectives seemed to be leading the children in their retractions. And the little boy, although the little girl seemed to retract satisfactorily, although it was agonizing to watch, it was, you know, night and day between the original disclosures and the retractions. But the little boy never fully retracted. He just couldn't find it in him to fully he just didn't have the cognizance to fully retract,
right,
no matter how much he was induced to. So the mother fled the country with her partner, and in absentia, framed, in my opinion, and none of the abusers were arrested. No crime scenes were sealed off. A consultant doctor confirmed that the children's injuries, both to, I'll just say it, anal and vaginal injuries, were consistent with the disclosures the children had made.
Wow, that sounds like strong evidence.
Yeah, very strong. But she was discredited and...
Who was, the young girl?
No, the doctor, the consultant.
Uh-huh.
The consultant, and then the method of examination she used was attempted to be discredited. The same consultant had flagged a previous case with a baby and said that there was sexual abuse going on, and she wasn't listened to, and that baby died in custody of the parents. I don't know an awful lot about that case, but
what is that doctor's name, Angie?
Hodes, Hodes. I don't remember her first name.
So this is a really interesting contrast to what we're seeing in this Me Too movement, where we're encouraging victims to come forward and share their stories by assuring them that they would be believed if they had the courage to do so. Yet you're talking about 2 of the most vulnerable types of victims, young children who came forward and were not believed and in fact were pressured to retract their stories. This seems very odd. Is it Dr. Deborah Hodes?
I don't remember her first name. She's had 40 years experience as a consultant in the field. It might be Deborah.
Well, let's see. Children and Young People's General Services is her specialty. If I showed you a picture of her, would you recognize her?
That sounds about right.
Can you see on the screen share, Angie, Dr. Deborah Hodes? Does that
University
look like
College Hospital. That looks like her. There's a mountain of what happened. What happened was it seemed to be very quickly covered up by the authorities. It should have gone to criminal court because there were criminal allegations being made, corroborated by the children being interviewed separately, corroborated by medical evidence with descriptions of the abusers, the locations, vast amounts of evidence. And instead of being heard in a criminal court, it was taken into a family court, which is referred to as secret family courts because you can't report on them unless the reporting is approved. So instead of a criminal investigation, there was what the judge called a 12-day fact-finding mission. And during that 12 days, she was not given the evidence. Apparently, many of the videos were in storage with the police in Chingford, in Essex, and were not given to the judge to view. As I say, none of the alleged crime sites were sealed. At that time, the only person to have been interviewed amongst, I think there were at least 14 abusers named, maybe much more. The only one that was spoken to was the father by invitation without caution about one incident.
Without caution. What is invitation without caution?
He was just invited in for a chat. He didn't have his technology taken.
Right.
It was absolutely, given the severity and the detail of the allegations, it warranted an absolutely high-level, incredibly thorough investigation. The other thing that was glaring was the children, a bit like Fiona Barnett, but they were only 8 and 9. They drew drawings of their abusers and very distinguishing marks, birthmarks, body piercings, tattoos.
Wow.
Yeah, they drew. It was absolutely there for the investigating, and it, in my opinion, was swiftly covered up. The mother and the boyfriend were, in my opinion, framed for having coached the children. Now, there's 34 videos of the children. I think 19 of them were their original disclosures. And if you could coach the children to the level of disclosure that they made, which included, not just being mass abused and given cocaine, given alcohol, given...
The children were given cocaine?
Given injections, witnessing satanic rituals, witnessing murders. The detail was so intensive that it absolutely warranted crime scenes being sealed and all the alleged abusers having their tech taken. And
question for sure.
None of that happened.
Wow.
None of that happened.
It's amazing
so
that
we
your
had a 12-day
technology...
fact-finding mission. We had the mother run out of the country. We had a very swift cover-up, and then since then, people have been campaigning worldwide. The videos were seen by about 100 million people worldwide. One of the campaigners who was accused of leaking the videos to the media, who actually... she inadvertently copied something that she was directing to the Prime Minister, but the videos had already been released twice when they realised they weren't going to get appropriate help from the authorities. So the one that was accused of leaking the videos, she's 74 and disabled. She's been in prison since February on breach of a gagging order, breach of a restraining order regarding the case. Her case isn't even listed until November, but she was put on remand in February at 74.
Wow, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Now, wait a
Yeah.
minute.
And the one you showed, the American, he was a YouTuber, flew over to do a documentary about it. They took his passport, took all his tech.
Wait, who was that? Who was that I showed? Michael?
He's called Rupert Quaintance.
When did I show him? I'm not familiar with him.
No, you mentioned the Ham and High article talking about an American citizen was jailed for so-say threatening parents. He came over to investigate and document the Hampstead allegations, and instead of that, he was a bit, forgive me for saying American about it, but he came over with good intentions, and he was raided, all his tech taken, left on bail for a year, and then jailed for 5 months in the UK.
Wow. Brutal.
Yeah, for harassment with intent to incite violence or something like that.
Let's read a little bit of information about Dr. Deborah Hodes, because she seems to have impressive credentials, yet, as you're saying, she's been, discredited with regard, or I should say there have been attempts made to discredit her information. She's a consultant community pediatrician in the Community Trust for the London Borough of Camden and the University College London Hospitals. She studied medicine at the Royal London Hospital and trained in pediatrics. Her first consultant post was in Hackney until she moved to UCLH in 2003. She's a fellow of the Royal College of Pediatricians and Child Health and has an active role as a co-opted member of the Child Protection Standing Committee, and she writes for their publications. She represented the college on the inquiry into child exploitation that reported in 2013, and now is the representative of the Children's Commissioner's inquiry into child sexual abuse. This certainly sounds like an accomplished doctor with top-level credentials. It's strange to me that the findings of a pediatrician who specializes in children's health and is obviously an advocate for avoiding child abuse would be discounted in the way you've described. That's quite strange.
She was manipulated. One of the techniques, I won't go into details, but one of the techniques she used for assessing anal penetration of children was argued with and said it was unreliable. And I've been told, as I say, with the baby P case, she had flagged sexual abuse with that baby, and that her methods were discounted and the baby died. But that's with regard to this case. At first she was categorical, and then she seemed to be leaned on because she then kind of backtracked a little bit, and the details are so complex on this case. And I worked as part of a team of about 30 people that were in it for the long haul, and set up a blog called Hampstead Research, and professionals all over the world and semi-professionals all pooled their knowledge for nothing. So there was extensive, and I can get this to you, I can get the files of evidence to you. The evidence was mountainous, but the only thing that happened since the judge that shut the case down after 12 days and said anybody that would think such a thing was just evil and perverse or something like that, because it had gone viral worldwide.
Wait, Angie, where can we see that Hampstead Research blog, or can we?
Well, it got sabotaged, but I have I'd have to send this to you by email because it's a big dossier. I've got a bundle of the evidence, and if you research as well, I don't want you to do this at the moment because as you know, I've been raided now, finally. I don't want you to look up the videos, but the videos are still online of the children's original 19 disclosures. And I challenge people to judge for themselves. But even, it just wasn't properly investigated. There are vast amounts of evidence, including from the Independent Police Complaints Commission, flagging up they agreed with 2 complaints. But the most significant one being that the detective appeared to lead the retractions.
Was it just called HampsteadResearch.com?
It was a WordPress blog, but it was so brutally attacked. The people that ran it are in another country and were in fear of their lives.
I see. I'm seeing something called Hoaxted research.
Yeah, that is what I suspect to be, or many of us suspect to be, a sort of shadow government opposition blog specifically set up to discredit anybody who spoke up in favour of the children. They have vast amounts of smear articles and videos on me. They've made death threats. They've caused somebody to commit suicide, allegedly. They've caused somebody else to be sectioned. It's a brutal, I would hold it up with Cicada 3301 or that level of trolling, organised and orchestrated and very, very well funded.
Exactly, that's what I'm getting at. I'm looking at this website right here, which is talking about, this is HopeGirlblog.com.
Yeah, now she's a good person.
Right, she's pointing it out as a GCHQ hoax, which sounds remarkably similar to some of the efforts that have been put up to try to stop me from sharing information precisely like the information you're sharing with us right now.
Exactly, high level, super sensitive, very consequential, important information, and then it's almost like a program is launched on you to smear your name, catch you off, target you. Like I said, people have been imprisoned, they've been sectioned, they've been evicted, harassed. There's a blog on my page called My Experience with Hoaxed Research by Naima Hope Fagan, and she's documented the death threats, it's very documented, 3 videos of different independent people reporting on hoaxed research. It appears to be a well-orchestrated, government-sponsored weapon of destruction.
Yeah. Angie, give us the URL for your blog one more time. I'd like to put that up for people to take a look at. Angela's Caches or something like that?
Yeah, angelascaches.org. I'm on an iPad because all my text's been taken and I'm a little bit visually impaired. So it's Angela's Caches without an apostrophe, and Caches is CACHES.
.org, right?
Yeah.
Okay, bringing that up right now. So, I mean, this is very interesting to me, Angela, because it seems like whenever anyone starts to talk about things like this, there's substantial reprisal in the form of online harassment. So people can go to angelascaches.org, and I will include that in the description after we're done, and I'll paste it into the comments right now. People can send you donations via PayPal if they'd like to help support your ongoing research into these matters, or for whatever reason they might like to do it. I would encourage people to go to Angela's Caches and take a look at what Angela has put there. It's very
I tell you where the most of my information is, although it is on my blog, but on my YouTube channel, Angela Power Disney, there's a playlist. There's a playlist on my YouTube channel called The Hampstead Cover-Up.
Huh. Let's take a look at that as well. So the police just came to your house, they took all your stuff, and are you now facing criminal charges? What will happen next?
What they did, now I've made a couple of live streams on Facebook, and the first one I made has had over 15,000 views, so I'm encouraged by that. That was on Friday. They said they weren't arresting me, but they did have a warrant to take my PC, 2 laptops and phone. And they invited me to come in and make a statement under caution at my own free will, and said it was in response to Ricky Dearman, the alleged leader of the Hampstead cult, flying to Ireland and filing a harassment claim against me.
Why
and
Ireland?
I just continued. I'll tell you, let me just finish why he did that, why he finally did that. He went on eBay for assumed identities and his assumed identity and everything, and it went international. I did a blog about it. It's a blog called Slime. It's in my blog. But I didn't name him or the children. But the next day, the Hoaxstead research crowd said it was revealed Ricky Dearman's whereabouts and the children and everything, and we told him not to go on that eBay thing. We advised him not to go and put the children in the public eye, but she's still the wicked one for exposing it. And I didn't expose it. They walked right into that because I didn't name them. But shortly after that, he flew to Dublin and filed. That's probably not the best one right there. It's a very long, complex story. If anybody's genuinely interested, I would suggest start at the beginning.
Right. There's a whole
There's one
playlist
very good.
here.
I'll try and pick out two of the best of them for you and send them to you after the show.
Sure.
But so they said he flew to Dublin and he said that I'd been harassing him for 3 years online, and that I'd made him fearful for his life and his children's lives, and I'd made him unemployable. And so they took a 3-hour statement from me, giving them very different evidence. And then they said it will be sent, I presume they're trawling through all my technology. And then they said it will be sent off to, I don't know what it's called, the Department of Prosecution, I don't know what you call it in Ireland, DPS or something like that, to see if there's a case to answer, if it's worth going to prosecution.
Do you live in Ireland? What's the significance of him going to Ireland to file charges?
Well, I don't know if there are. I find it very disconcerting that Ireland and England are cooperating in silencing whistleblowers. There was a similar situation. A journalist tried to fly to Jersey. I think it was an American, very respected American journalist tried to fly to Jersey to report on the Haute de Garenne children's abuse case. She was turned back at the airport. Another expert or citizen journalist, whatever you might like to call, but an expert in satanic ritual abuse, tried to fly to Ireland to report on the Tuam babies case, and he was turned back at the airport. So when it suits them, they don't go international. But it's, to me and to a lot of Irish people, it's very disconcerting that the cooperation in terms of what I would allege are cover-ups is cross-border.
It is disconcerting. So Ricky Dearman
Yeah,
appears
like
as an actor, is that correct?
Yeah.
So we're
Well,
here.
he was an actor. He was in a promotional video for Charles will tell would like this. He was in a promotional video for a charity in Haiti.
Wow.
Called Love. Yes, Love for Haiti. LUV. Number 4, Haiti. He was involved with a cult, with a woman leader. I think she's based in Los Angeles, called the Supreme Master. I think she's Indonesian or something like that, Cheng Hui or something. And he's also done a promotional video for her. She has a TV channel. She donates to the Clintons.
Really?
And all sorts of. If I'd known we were going to go this deep, I'll send this stuff to you. But so he did a promotional video for that. He did a promotional video for Love for Haiti. He's done a couple of movies, nothing major at all, but.
Well, there was very little listed here on his IMDb resume, if I'm looking at the right guy.
Yeah, Ricky Dearman.
There's a few different entries for Ricky Dearman. One bullet or palindrome?
Yeah, the bullet. There's a clip of him where he's threatening to kill somebody. I think the actor thing was either an aspiration that didn't come to fruition or it was a cover, in my opinion.
I think we know a lot of people who use acting as a cover and then try to accuse me of being an actor, which I have never been, never claimed to be, never worked as, but it's interesting to note this pattern.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a generic clear all, because I've also, I think that, I don't know, but I've also been an actress. So you know, we can't just say anybody suspicious who's been an actor or an actress is automatically guilty.
Not
But
saying
yeah,
that.
it definitely does seem to feature, and yeah, it does seem to feature.
Now, what do we find at rickydearman.com?
I don't know. I like I said, after 3 years being brutally trolled online, very similar to many ways you describe and others, and not offline as well, I stepped down, and then I just did the blog because somebody got in touch and said, we found the children, he's gone online with them, he's gone on camera with them. I still get intel, and my dream would be to have a decent detective in London to whom I could pass on really high level, important intel and trust that he would investigate it. But it seems to have been closed down from the very, very, very highest levels. One of our mutual, I don't know what word to use, but sometimes you get people that will give you some truth and some not truth.
That's a limited hangout.
Something that Robert David Steele said was that nobody would touch Hampstead because it would collapse the UK government. And something that David Icke allegedly said, they were trying to recruit me at the time for a TV channel, his son was, and what I was told was, Dad won't touch that case, it wouldn't be worth his career to touch that case. It's almost like too hot to handle case, you know. It's a bit like the Franklin case or the Presidio case, or it goes right to the top, I would suspect. And our citizen journalists and researchers and specialists, we would have much preferred not to do the years of research we did. We would have preferred that the authorities did it.
Of course. Well, there's no ability for citizen journalists to, you know, prosecute criminals or carry out the law. All we can do is find information and report on it. Exactly,
and that's what, you know, that's what we're being come down on for. It's like, you know, that's what we're being come down on for. So I don't know, I could end up in jail. You know, I'm not believing that will happen. I'm not believing to be found guilty of harassment. I'm not believing to even have my tech disappear for 8 months or something. But I can be naive, and that was a point I wanted to make to you about MK Ultra. Is I think we were always regarded as disposable. The times in my earlier life where I had assassination attempts, it just shows me that, you know, if I died doing my work, it would be like, oh, well, you know. So I'm very clear that if I don't believe I'm still functioning as an asset at all, I believe I use the training I was brutally and maliciously put through. I now use it for good.
Right.
And you know, for truth. And but I still am aware that, look at Jenny Moore. Is it Jenny Moore?
Yes.
You know, you can be alone. You know, you can die alone doing this work.
I'm not yet convinced that Jenny Moore is actually dead.
I saw you say that once, and I first of all I was shocked and horrified that you would say such a thing, but I remember sharing your opinion. You were one of the very first, if not the first, to say that you weren't fully convinced of the Seth Rich narrative, and I agreed back then. I was like, yeah, something's not right with this. Jenny Moore, I don't know. I haven't followed as much, and I've never seen her face or so on. And if she was taken out, that's devastating. But I admire your journalistic courage, where you risk the wrath, you know, and the sort of feeding frenzy of attack by saying something which is shocking, which is that possibly she may not be dead.
Well, the reason I say that is because the initial reporting... Sorry, Angie, what was that?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh. The reason I said it was because the initial reporting, of course, came from George Webb, who is a source that I completely do not trust. I think that George, as you pointed out, you mentioned the concept of a limited hangout. Now, this was a term created by a cabinet member of Richard Nixon, I think Haldeman, or one of the guys who was involved in Watergate, where in tapes that have been declassified since the event, Nixon and his cabinet are discussing the problems that they face should all this information be left hanging out. And they talk about a strategy of voluntarily offering up a limited amount of damaging information so that people can fixate on that while they cover the most damaging information. And this was dubbed a limited hangout. So when someone like George Webb shares some amount of truthful information, I believe that's being done to gain your trust. He did this with me quite a bit. Show something truthful, demonstrate conclusively how it is truthful, gain your trust, and then they now have basically a free ticket to lie to you and have you trust them. I found it very conspicuous that George made multiple videos the morning of August the 14th, 1 week ago, letting everyone know that the internet was out at his hotel and that he had to leave to broadcast his videos. I don't understand why he couldn't use the cellular connection from his phone to broadcast the videos, why he needed Wi-Fi there. I also am curious to know if anyone else at the hotel or the front desk experienced an internet outage, or if this was something that George just said, because it does seem like something someone might say if they were constructing an alibi to demonstrate that they weren't there and couldn't be involved with this incident. Furthermore, when I called the police there in Capitol Heights, the desk, I guess, person, I don't know what the proper term is, but the person answering the phone at the police station didn't seem aware of this death on that day. Now, I have no idea how large of a municipality Capitol Heights is or how difficult the workload the police are dealing with, but I found it a little surprising that the person had no knowledge of someone found dead in a hotel that morning. And when I followed up again yesterday with the homicide department, no records of Jenny Moore's death were there, which other people who are Crowdsource community members have commented that they find strange given their knowledge of police procedure. Obviously, I have extremely limited knowledge of police procedure, so it's possible that the case is still being worked on and that file wasn't available to whoever was answering the phone. But the lack of any local news reporting on this death, I found very strange. I spoke with Rod Wheeler yesterday, who many people know is a former Washington, D.C. Metro Police homicide detective. And Rod had shared with me, you know, he knows the D.C. area very well. He's directly familiar with that hotel. And he shared with me this local news article about another person who was found just a week or two prior at an adjacent hotel, dead, also in Capitol Heights, and this got news reporting. I would imagine, you know, Capitol Heights is not Chicago, it's not New York, it's not Los Angeles. I would imagine 2 deaths at 2 hotels in 2 weeks would be somewhat newsworthy.
Front page news.
I would think. So again, I don't have definitive information. I'm certainly not trying to disparage Jenny Moore, but I didn't know Jenny Moore. I don't trust George Webb, and I know that George Webb has been involved in other strange incidents in the past. Here's another thing that gives me pause. Right away, when this was reported, George Webb's brother started posting videos linking to other videos that tried to implicate me in some way
I saw
in
that.
Jenny Moore's
death.
Very
slick, very slick. I've had that done to me. They're trying to accrue a body count to me. Each time they get somebody sectioned or imprisoned, or even when somebody dies, they try and allocate it to me. They assign it to me. It's inversion. It's satanic. It's
it's Alinsky-esque.
that they are guilty of. They accuse you of.
Exactly. Saul Alinsky method. And just, I don't mean to cut you off, but the thing that I want to put out there for everyone to understand and appreciate is that when I talk about these things, it's not about me arguing with other YouTubers or trying to divide the truth community. It's about pointing out these patterns. It seems to me what Dave is trying to do is to create all this false evidence, much in the same way that former MI6 operative Christopher Steele put together a dossier on Donald Trump and then pushed that dossier into the public media. And then that was used to get a FISA warrant, and that was used to start an investigation. And they try to use these fictional stories to create real, tangible legal jeopardy for the target. So in this case, Dave has now entered this evidence of his into a federal civil lawsuit that he has brought against me. So now, any responsible news reporter could factually say that a federal civil suit alleges that Jason Goodman is involved in a murder for hire plot. And Dave can make that happen multiple times and push that out into the media such that people who don't know me and don't know what I'm up to, if they're more exposed to that information than the true information, well, who knows what they'll believe. But this is the technique that they are using time and time again. So it's more important than ever that people share videos from angelascaches.org and that people watch videos from Angela's YouTube channel and share those videos and watch this playlist and join Crowdsource the Truth's Patreon page at patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, because this is a cyber war and I didn't start it, but we are waging it. We are defending our reputations against people who we now see. This seems to be a Five Eyes operation. GCHQ is suspected of creating websites that defame Angela and other people that are simply investigating. I do not advocate the harassment or advocating any type of verbal or visual or media, and certainly not a physical assault of any kind. But I do want people to be responsible in doing research and sharing research and coming to this broadcast in the way that you have, Angela. I have to thank you for doing that.
The latest info on Hoaxdead, and I haven't examined it because, again, I keep saying I'm done. I've done 3 years of this. I'm done. I'm going to report on other things. I've got my own issues to resolve. But the latest theory put forward, maybe with some evidence, I hope so, is that people were trained by Mossad and then placed strategically in positions of power and influence to do this cyber warfare, to do these operations. I
mean, I wouldn't doubt it.
Who trained who and where is not so much the point, but people in very high places are launching armies of professional character assassins, truth, people that will hide the truth, that will target truth tellers. It's orchestrated at the very highest level. There was also a document where 2,000 people were hired by the British military specifically for online, whatever word, they wouldn't call it terrorism.
Warfare.
Cyber warfare. It's the new war. It is the new terrorism.
It's a silent war.
And just to say, it is a silent war, and it's got a lot of victims, I have to say. But just to say, as I say, I followed George in the early days, then I followed both of you. Then I was sad at the breakup, and I thought, oh, make friends, you guys are both genius. Then I saw I admire your tenacity, because you're like a dog with a bone. If you see something not right, you won't let go.
Thank you.
And I admire that. But I did watch a couple of them after Jenny allegedly died, and the first report of it, he did look shell-shocked. And then when somebody sent a dog or something, and Jenny loved dogs and trained dogs, and then there were real tears running down his face. So who knows? I don't know.
Perhaps he's skilled
You're
in
treading
the
on sacred
Stanislavski
ground
method.
when we say somebody's not dead.
Right.
You know, or even when we say somebody's not innocent of satanic ritual abuse allegations or not innocent to a satisfactory investigation, we're treading on sacred ground, because if we're wrong, you know, then that's really uncomfortable. But the narrative put out is so manipulated that it's a duty to actually investigate. And if we don't, we will just be morons that sit there and, you know, the mainstream media says, oh, you know, the Russians hacked the election, Hillary was robbed, and people would go, oh, okay then. So it's crucial for truth that people, you know, I don't know if we're going to be able to stop this tsunami of censorship and torture. It's torture. It's not just harassment.
Yeah.
It's cyber terrorism.
It is. I agree with you.
You know, it can destroy lives. It can destroy people. It can destroy their businesses. I'm unemployable.
Right. They've
blackened my name so successfully online.
And that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to do with me as well. Sorry?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's serious.
It is very serious.
And, you know, if she's dead, I'm sorry. But if she's not, and it's a psyop, then it's worthy of investigating. The same as Seth Rich.
I'm not saying that she's not dead. I'm just saying that there are a lot of strange coincidences surrounding this alleged death. Yeah. And I haven't seen sufficient evidence to show that she's dead. And she was working with or for someone that I absolutely do not trust. She showed up at a press conference, put herself right next to me. If she didn't want to be seen, why would she go to a public press conference where at least 4 live streams were rolling, including her own live stream, which she herself gave up her location? I showed her on my live stream, didn't say her name, didn't indicate who she was, simply because I had no idea what her motivation was to be there.
So you were just keeping safe, which I would do the same.
If I showed up dead at the hotel that night, I wanted people to know who had just walked into the press conference and sat beside me. I have no reason.
No, absolutely. If there's any possibility of gang stalking or any nefarious activity, when you're doing a dangerous job like we are, it's the first thing you're told is if somebody makes you feel just a little bit off center, film. If I see a car, you know, the last 3 days since the raid, I've walked the dog and I've seen the same car follow me. And I've kicked myself. Well, I haven't got my phone because they took my phone. But I borrowed a phone, and I should just go up to that driver and say, hello, my name is Angela. Can I help you? I seem to be seeing you here every day.
Yes.
You know, and sometimes you're wrong, and they can turn out to be. I filmed someone in Lanzarote that was climbing all over outside my windows and making me very nervous. And it turned out with the manager. So sometimes you get it wrong, but it's better safe than sorry.
Yes. Angela, I'd like to share this with you. I don't know if you can see it on the screen share. It's from the Iowa City Press Citizen, which is part of the USA Today network. And actually, the webpage seems to even be designed in the same way as USA Today. This is talking about a man from North Liberty, which I guess is a town in Iowa or whatever, where he's saying he's part of an invisible army that the FBI uses to protect critical infrastructure. And this is a guy named Tom Schultz of North Liberty, who's part of an invisible army of some 46,000 nationwide volunteers. This is InfraGard. That's a group that Susan Smith first told us about. Susan was an eyewitness to the Las Vegas shooting of October 1st. She's a vendor who was selling country and Western items, boots and hats and belt buckles and things like this. And she said that she was a member of this InfraGard for many years, but then after September 11th, it started to change in ways that she felt were unconstitutional, and so she left. And this article was just shared with me by a crowdsourcer who is aware of what's going on and saw the show with Michael Barden yesterday, and I'm very curious to hear how Michael's court case is going today. But Michael's a targeted individual, and despite the fact that I'm using one of the fastest computers manufactured by Apple Computer, yesterday, our video interview slowed down to a almost total halt. I mean, it's as
I
if,
listened to it.
yeah.
It was excruciating. Yeah.
Well, it's as if you got into your car. I mean, perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps a sequence of computer glitches caused that to occur. But it's as if you got into your automobile that you drive every day, turned it on as you normally do, and stepped on the gas, and instead of going 50 miles an hour, the car couldn't exceed 5 or 10 miles an hour. It's an extremely noticeable reduction in performance that is difficult to explain without considering the possibility of outside interference.
Yeah. You feel, I think, I would say you're a targeted individual at this stage, Jason, and I know I am and have been probably most of my life in one way or another, although I've been left alive, because really if they want to kill you, they can kill you. There's no doubt about that. You can have a spontaneous heart attack, you can have a stroke, you could have an aneurysm.
Collapsed lung.
The technology absolutely exists.
Yes, I agree with that.
It's more that they can either have you quit your job, quit your work, or commit suicide, or be labeled as crazy.
Right, and that seems to be their goal. See, the problem that I'm presenting is that, my job, I started this after my business sort of went downhill in Hollywood and I was broke. I decided to do this because I wanted to get the news out, and I didn't have a clear idea how I would fund Crowdsource the Truth when I started. Initially, I sold all my expensive Hollywood camera equipment and was living off of that for a while, but when that money ran out, part of my, I didn't really have a plan. I just figured I'd continue to do 3D production work and that would fund my efforts as an online journalist, but there was no 3D production work to be had. So throughout the course of doing Crowdsource the Truth, I came up with this business model that if everyone would turn away from the billionaire-owned, Google-supported YouTube and the advertiser-driven model of corporate-owned, advertiser-driven news, and turn more to this micro-sponsorship model where each individual viewer was paying $1 a month or $5 a month, a low amount, that allows me to stay independent of the influence of YouTube or whoever the sponsor might be or whoever might control that venue. So it's extremely important for people to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. And you're the second person in 2 days to tell me that I'm a targeted individual. I've never thought of myself as that. I'm not promoting the notion that I am that, but certainly we see people online making videos about me, people who I don't know, people who don't show their faces, people who don't use their real names. When I accuse someone of a crime, like Robert David Steele, when I say Robert David Steele has committed charity fraud, I say that because I have evidence that Robert David Steele solicited $250,000 over the internet in the state of New York. His lawyer has offered written testimony that they in fact received $2,700 in charitable contributions from people in New York, which verifies my claim that he was soliciting this money and he received it. He is not registered with the New York State Bureau of Charities. That's a crime. I'm reporting it to the public as a matter of public interest. This brought him...
Sorry.
Yes. No.
That's one of the things that made me... I went back to work like you. I'd raised my children, and then I'd worked in journalism in the 80s, and I'd still done a bit of book reviewing and, little soccer club articles and stuff like that. But when my youngest was 18 and going off to college, I thought, right, let me go back to work as a journalist. But there's no way to make money online doing it unless you work for, whatever, a mainstream media outlet. And I was in the business of truth telling already. And I made my target on my GoFundMe $1 million.
Wow.
And partly just to be outrageous, but I said with complete conviction that I could spend $5 million with integrity in the work in the field of exposing and ending child abuse and child trafficking and ritual abuse and so on and so forth. Now, I was only kind of just really throwing one at the trolls to say $1 million, but to my knowledge, I've never had a donation from New York. But I would possibly be guilty of the same thing if I let you promote my GoFundMe and then people donated to it.
But are you claiming to be...
Because my target's $1 million, I'd be guilty of that same thing.
No, not necessarily. Are you claiming to be a 501c3 tax-exempt charitable organization?
No.
Okay.
No.
So when people...
Most of the donations, this is why they say I was deceitful in it. It shows about 24 grand, but 10 grand was from my sister's estate. 10 grand was a gift.
Angie, stop. The problem is, you can tell people, hey, I want to build a birdhouse and it's going to cost $1 million. If you'd like to donate money to that project, here's the link. And someone can give you $10 million to build a birdhouse. That's their choice. If you tell them that it's a charity and a tax-deductible donation.
Oh, no, I see the difference.
Then
I get you now.
It's charity fraud. I do not accept donations. I accept sponsorships from people who want to pay to sponsor the program, and they then need to pay tax. If you give $1 to Crowdsource the Truth, you still need to pay the U.S. government tax on that $1 that you've earned. The problem is Robert David Steele was claiming it was a tax-deductible donation to a charity, which amounts to theft from every taxpayer in the United States of America, and it's a violation of the law. That's why it's a felony, and that's why Robert David Steele has shut up about his stupid lawsuit.
I get the distinction. I get the distinction down. Thanks for clarifying that. No, I got brutalized so much by the trolls. I've done charitable work all my life, especially when I was raising the children, and I got called a charity scammer. They wrote 50 letters to my community. They slandered me, libeled me, made all sorts of accusations. So I'm experimenting with not even handling money, but just saying to people, if you want to sponsor my rental car on a trip, or if you want to sponsor my accommodation, or if somebody wants to sponsor my internet and software, like Zoom, Professional, and, website, I'm experimenting with that way But I, again, admire your tenacity, because you've gone the Patreon-only route, which a lot of people choke on, but you just keep doing the right thing and putting one foot in, well, right or wrong, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I know what's wrong is work as hard as I do or you do and not have money to pay the bills. That's wrong.
I agree with you. What's also wrong is to deceive
I do agree
people.
That people...
That's also
when I was working, I used to buy a newspaper every evening to travel home and read. And I'd buy a magazine at the weekend or two that were expensive magazines. And that was just part of my consumption of media. And so if that was, I don't know, $20 a week, why not redirect that? I'm not trying to pump you up, but I'm just saying it's a weird thing that the conglomerates have got us all working really, really hard and passionately for peanuts. Right. Except for the few that make it big time. And so I admire your sort of trailblazing way. You let the criticism go over your head, and you're like, no, this is how it's going to pay without having to answer with breaking us. So I admire that. I'm a bit burned in that area at the moment, because I'm a bit burned from all the brutality that I've suffered from investigating this Hampstead case for 3.5 years.
Yeah, I think that we might need to look into that more closely, perhaps. And, you and I are definitely delving into some sensitive subjects. We haven't spoken very much more about your exposure to MK Ultra mind control, and I apologize. That's probably my fault. But, I had said something on the Kevin Shipp intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp, and I apologize if I misspoke. Kevin Shipp and I, as many people know, are doing a Patreon-only show called The Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp, and people can see that on patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp with 2 P's, or on patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth. And this most recent show that we did was, and Kevin and I coordinated this with your appearance on Crowdsource the Truth, Angela. We did a show specifically on MK Ultra, and I don't want to share too much of that with the general audience here, but of course people can go on to Patreon here, and they can see Kevin and I spoke with a social worker, a licensed social worker, named Carol. Oh, Carol, forgive me, your last name escapes me right now. But Carol was an expert on MK Ultra, and she spoke with us about patients that she's seen over the years. And she reaffirmed, Angela, that many people have been following your story for many, many years, and that you are considered a very credible witness to this type of torture and sexual abuse. And Carol's father was in the CIA. Boy, let me get Carol's name so that everybody can remember who our guest was. I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, she was excellent, and her credentials were impeccable.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking extemporaneously like this, it's often difficult to remember the exact details. But I think Carol, well, that's so bad. Carol Warner, of course. Her name was Carol Warner, and she's an author. Her father was in the CIA in the very early days. Kevin, of course, is a recovering CIA agent, and I encourage people to go on to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and watch that episode. So I misspoke about your marriage to someone in the Disney family. Can you help us clarify what I had wrong there?
Well, it may not be, I may have misspoken, but because I work with a lot of survivors, including MK Ultra survivors, many of them are triggered by my name. They see Disney, they've come up through MK Ultra, and it's immediately red flag, on top of the chimney. So I guess I was a little bit defensive in clarifying that it's not the branch of Walt Disney, which is Kevin Shipp said he was a 33rd degree Mason. I think I've read somewhere that there are degrees above that, and he was 54th. But that's irrelevant. But I do believe that extensive research on what goes on at Disney World and the 33 Club and
what is the 33 Club?
It's a basement secret club at Disney World.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I've seen all the subliminals in the cartoons, and the mind control, basically mind controlling the output from Disney, as well as what happens to the Britney Spears and all the youngsters that come out of there, and suddenly, within 5-10 years, their lives are devastated. They're just utterly destroyed in a way, ruined.
Huh. So the
point I was trying to make, I was trying to distance myself from the Walt Disney and his brother and that side of the family, but certainly not to distance myself from having been manipulated into that marriage, huge Freemasonic background. Both of us were like dissociated MK survivors, not awake yet. And I believe it was for breeding purposes that I was put with the Disney. I have a daughter as well that was born in Marin County. Mm-hmm. And I looked into her family background, and there's lots of tie-ups with Jesuits and Priory of Zion. If you do the research, you could spend the rest of your life doing it. But I believe all three of my children were orchestrated births for breeding purposes, for, put this bloodline with that bloodline and see if we get what we're looking for, just like dogs or horses, really.
Wow. So I'm showing right now an image from this 33 Club that apparently is actually at Walt Disney World, or where is this?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure which one, because I've managed not to take my children to Disney World, which is a miracle.
Wow.
Especially as we spent 6 weeks in Santa Monica in 2010, and my daughter used to go for family reunions regularly. But yeah, it's worthy of research. I've only researched that side of Disney from an interest point of view, but I can go down. I don't need to. My own experience is something I sometimes try and avoid resolving.
Wow.
Because it's less painful to investigate somebody else's trauma than your own.
So this is Freedom World News talking about inside the Disney Club that's so exclusive you've never even heard of it. Club 33, named after Walt Disney's Masonic ties. Let's see what it says about that. It's not opening anything. Well, that's something to investigate further for sure. Angela, you are absolutely a fascinating guest, and even though we've only had, oh, wait a minute, look at this. Something wrong with that connection.
Yeah, it won't be popular to do some research on that, but it's well worth researching. And the secret police force, they have their own independent police force there.
Disney does.
Yeah, and there've been something like 54 pedophiles arrested recently that were all Disney employees.
Whoa!
I mean, God forgive, I don't want to get another person targeting me, but yeah, it's not a name that I'm hugely proud of, and I considered dropping it because my children have finished school now. But now I'm known as Angela Power Disney, so I have to roll with it. And I do believe it was an engineered marriage. Absolutely, it was an engineered breeding project to some mad scientist somewhere.
Wow. Not to fixate on this when you're talking about something much more important, but this is a rather unusual error message that I've actually seen very recently, and it's prompting me to realize that I may need to make another video about this. But we're treading on dangerous ground here.
We are treading on dangerous ground. That's the nature of the work. Dangerous ground, and I just pray in Jesus' name for safety and protection over everybody doing this kind of work, because it is dangerous work, you know. There's no doubt about it. And I'm reminded that whenever my life has literally been on the line, I would have just been a statistic if I did die. It would have been, oh, well, you know, she was useful, but she's gone. And I think I've been kept alive for whatever reasons as well. You know I could have been taken out. Any of us could be taken out with the technology that exists today.
Certainly.
But it wouldn't be very convenient because you've got so many followers and subscribers and you're so well known. The more public you go, the safer you are.
Right. That's why they're going this route of trying to discredit me, trying to associate me with murders, trying to associate me with bomb hoaxes that they put together.
This is why, that's another reason, well, no, I won't even go there. But we can talk again because this stuff...
Say again?
Trained for was to see behind the veil.
Sorry.
This kind of thing fascinates me, and I was trained to see what was behind the veil. I was trained to glean the information that wasn't necessarily obvious, you know.
Right.
I'll just give you one example of something that occurred to me. I'm not trying to show off, but do you remember the hippie movement? Have you read Dave McGowan's book, Weird Scenes in the Canyon?
No, but I
referring to Laurel Canyon.
I presume Laurel Canyon.
He died.
Yes.
He got a sudden cancer and was dead in 6 months. But he and many others have done the research showing that the whole music movement that came out of Laurel Canyon and the whole hippie movement and everything was engineered. The whole LSD thing was engineered. It was paid for by the CIA. It was flooded. It had operatives in it. And many of the musicians that seemed like great musicians, like Jim Morrison and, you know, some Mamas and Papas, all that era, they were actually children of the military and probably MK survivors that were just made to look like a rebel and thrown out there. And I've thought that about YouTubers. I actually said it out loud because Unirock, his brother, works for the Department of Defense.
Really? How do we know that?
He said it. I followed him for a while.
Wow.
He said his brother works for the DOD. And Nathan Stoltman, who I'm stuck down on him because he's doing some good work, but he admitted that his father is a member of the SES.
What?
Yes. He admitted that his father is a member of the SES. And Unirock admitted that his brother works for the DOD. And I'm sort of gambling, I'm betting that a lot of these YouTubers, because I know that Unirock uses MK Ultra with all the flashing lights and the multiple stimulus and everything that he uses. He says it's just a cultural gamer thing. But to my eye, that's MK Ultra, that's manipulated.
Yes, hypnotic imagery.
It's hypnotic, it's so I think it's worthy. I think you'll find, these are just little snippets I picked up along the way, but some of these young lads, they may have military backgrounds and, have been placed to do a job, just like the musicians were in the 60s, placed to lead an apparent rebellion or apparent revolution or
well, there's something else I want to add
movement.
to what you're saying, Angela, because it also fits the pattern of our friends George and David.
Yes, military background,
This
intelligence,
sort of manufactured opposition, this fake opposition, where they control the opposition, they control the offense and the defense, and it's a show for everyone else. And they're able to control information through doing things like this.
And I think the Me Too was a controlled release of information to direct away from child abuse and child trafficking and satanic ritual abuse and cannibalism and sacrificing. I think the whole Me Too thing was like, okay, they've got us, we have to give them something. Right, we will manufacture and promote the Me Too movement, and that will assuage the public, or distract the public away from the dark, deep truth.
That's very interesting.
And so I'm not trying to undermine any grown woman being masturbated or grown or feeling like she had to consent to sex to get a part in a movie. I'm not condoning that whatsoever, but I believe that was a controlled movement to mask the real issue.
That's an interesting insight, Angela, because there was just an article in Variety this morning. Variety is essentially the Hollywood version of the New York Times. It's a trade paper that is basically the biggest in Hollywood, and they're talking about how Harvey Weinstein's attorney has blasted Asia Argento's hypocrisy. Asia Argento, of course, is the former girlfriend of recently deceased Anthony Bourdain, who was found hanging from a red scarf, which I find very odd. And this was just after Asia Argento called out Harvey Weinstein during a speech at the Cannes Film Festival. She remarked that Mr. Weinstein had raped her in Cannes during the festival when she was 21 years old, and that the festival was Mr. Weinstein's hunting ground, and she said that there were many others like him in the audience, and that she knew who they were. Argento was accused of having sex with a 17-year-old male actor, and the age of consent in California, of course, is 18. So I believe it was yesterday, Argento paid a $380,000 settlement to this boy to take over the copyright and to take possession of a selfie of them together in the hotel where he alleges this occurred. And of course, the following day, Mr. Weinstein's attorney blasts Asia Argento for her allegations of sexual impropriety against Mr. Weinstein. I have encountered Harvey Weinstein one time personally. I've spoken about this. I used to go to the Cannes Film Festival pretty often when film projects I would work on would be for sale there in the Marché du Film. Sometimes I was paid to go to promote the film, and also I was involved in 3D films, so the presentation of them was a little bit more technically involved than a standard film, and on various occasions the filmmakers wanted me there to make sure it worked properly. And on one occasion, a friend of mine who worked on a film that was produced by Harvey Weinstein was going to a party, and I met him for a drink at the hotel where the party was happening prior to the event. Harvey Weinstein walked into the bar that we were in and yelled at somebody who was working for him. And in my brief personal encounter with him, I found him to be a very objectionable individual.
Yeah, obnoxious.
Yes.
But I would suggest this is more theatre.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
This is more theatre. Because if you look at her Instagram, which she's since put to private, there's indication of far more dark.
She admits to being a red witch. Her father was Dario Argento, a famous Italian film director who made horror films that were based on occult themes.
But her Instagram photos were very much along the Pizzagate, James Alefantis et al. Lines. Some really disturbing, deeply disturbing Instagram photos. So all of this, I've had to pay a boy off because I didn't know he was 17. I think that's all theatre. I'm not undermining any survivor of any age, but I think it's all theatre. It's all a throw.
And I certainly don't mean to defend Harvey Weinstein.
No,
I
I
do
know.
believe
I know.
he is an objectionable individual who very probably has done some of the things that he's accused of. I think we need to see the evidence. But the thing that's interesting is that Robert David Steele has published some sort of book or e-book claiming that Harvey Weinstein is a Zionist pedophile. And this is another, I haven't heard any underage people come forward with allegations against Weinstein. So I'm a little bit sensitive to these, just because...
I bring you full circle, Jason. I bring you back to, please, people, look at the 8 and 9-year-old siblings in Hampstead disclosing, and look what happened to them.
Yes, because that's actual testimony from victims, and we get distracted.
First-hand, yeah.
We get distracted by nonsense.
And I do not believe the best actress or actor in the world, even with suggested hypnosis or brutal torture to make them say things. After watching 3 of those videos, one is called Papa Kills Babies, and
what's that?
I defy everybody just
we're losing it
acting, even coached, tortured, hypnotized. I can't see it.
Right.
So when you say, why don't we have any victims? Because they are of necessity vulnerable, and even the adults that come forward get brutalized. And
well, look at
look
Anthony
at that lady
Bourdain.
that you had on, Carol. Look at her. She had assassination attempts on her.
As did Kevin.
As an adult, and as the child of an adult CIA guy, she had assassination attempts on her life. So what hope have the children got if we don't speak for them?
I want to point something out before we wrap it up here. This is a book written by Robert David Steele, an individual who has brought a lawsuit against me on basically totally made up charges that has yet to be ruled upon by a judge. He's written this book here called Zion in Shiksa Land. A shiksa is a Hebrew word for a non-Jewish woman, and generally is a term used to disparage a non-Jewish woman dating a Jewish man or a Jewish man dating a non-Jewish woman. Robert David Steele has written this book called Harvey Weinstein, First Major Jewish Pedophile Domino in the USA. Now, again, I don't want to defend Harvey Weinstein because he is a despicable individual, but I find it curious that Robert David Steele, a man who has put a lot of anti-Jewish hatred out into the world, writes a book about Robert David Steele being about Harvey Weinstein being a pedophile. But I haven't heard any allegations against against Harvey Weinstein from children. I've only heard allegations from adult women, and oddly, in the case of both Asia Argento and who's the other woman that was publicly accusing him, the other actress, I forget her name, it seems they both had relationships with Harvey Weinstein that went on after the alleged sexual assault occurred. Now that doesn't mean it wasn't. It implies some kind of consent, doesn't it?
Well, I tell you what's possibly going on here. Now, Robert David Steele came to London and did a 3-day inquiry. Him and others set up a
like a
tribunal,
mock trial,
natural justice tribunal, and they raised $250,000 just to establish it.
Whoa.
To see it. Yeah, $250,000. But that was like 2-3 years ago. And then they were trying to raise another $120,000 to come to London to do this 3-day hearing.
Wow.
And
seems like a lot.
Yeah. Well, it does. If it does, it doesn't. But it looked like it was all first class all the way. But when you look at Royal Commission inquiries, they spend $100 million and on 7 years, and then they don't have any legal powers. So,
wow.
But there's also there were some brilliant testimonies came out of it. But there's also been a lot of backlash and muddy waters, because I had people contacting me about different members that were on that board. And it was all like, send us money and we'll give it to these survivors that are coming to us. It was another hierarchy. But interestingly enough, there's a theory. There's somebody going to court Friday in England called Brian Harvey, an ex-pop star. And he's come up with a theory which has got quite a lot of credibility, which is that some people are paid operatives to go into the public arena and say outrageous things like this person's a Jewish pedo. And there's a guy called Tom Cahill in England whose parent is a social worker, and he's currently in Thailand or wherever. But he went online for years saying this and one's a pedo and the other one's a pedo. And he never got his Twitter taken down, never got his YouTube taken down, and never got prosecuted. And sometimes it's possible that they are a plant to make other people follow them and think, oh, well, he said it, I can say it.
Well,
and then they
also,
come after you.
Right.
They come after the ones like Bill Maloney's another one, committed treason and stood outside the palace and said, the royal family, and called out names in the royal family of being paedophiles and so on. And there may or may not be truth in that. I suspect there is, but these may be government paid people who will say outrageous things to lead people like sheep to go off the edge, and then all of us can be cleaned up and put away. All of us can be prosecuted, and they get away without.
Well, or the person goes on
how can he go
InfoWars.
around books and say,
right. Or the person goes on InfoWars and tells Alex Jones that there is a NASA-funded child slave colony on Mars, and then that gets attributed to InfoWars and becomes one of the things that they use to shut them down and take them off the air. So
I do giggle about that, but I'm 61, and what I've found out in the last 5 or so years with MK Ultra, 20 years ago I would have thought was science fiction. So even though 99% of me giggles with you about Mars, 1% of me goes, that could be possible.
I don't know.
Do you know, it's like, and we're living in a crazy, crazy world, Jason.
Well, NASA, of course, has denied
anything
it.
is possible.
NASA has denied it. NASA has denied it, and by all measures.
NASA tells lies. NASA was set up by Nazis. It's
Perhaps
like, who's
for
telling you
another
the
show.
truth these days? People have to learn to discern.
Right. I don't think that Robert
So we didn't
David
get real deep on my early MK Ultra days, but I've enjoyed the conversation, and maybe we can do it again.
Absolutely, Angela. I really want to thank you for spending this time with me today, and I know it's getting a little bit late there in the United Kingdom.
I have a counsellor that has offered to come on a show. I've had counselling because in Ireland they said they don't know what dissociative identity. Well, they did diagnose with it, but they said we have absolutely no provision for dealing with it. So I've been doing online counselling, and she said she'd be happy to come on one time if that was interesting to anybody.
Absolutely. Well, let's have an offline conversation about your next appearance on the show, and I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank all the people that have been watching us. I want to follow up with Larry Nichols. I spoke to Larry after our last show. A lot of people were worried about him, how he was feeling. He did say he was okay, but when I contacted him this morning about 3 o'clock,
so alarming.
He hasn't gotten back to me yet today, so I'm going to go call Larry and see if he'd like to do a show today. And if not, I'll see everybody later tonight. Angela, I'll speak to you very soon. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing
Please
all
ask
that.
people to pray for me, because even though I'm giggling and laughing, it's pretty disturbing having all your tech taken, all my sources revealed,
Absolutely.
and in danger of what I would suggest was a shadow government. They want me in jail. So please pray for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. Angela Power Disney, thank you so much for joining me, Angela, and thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you later.
Okay. God bless.